it doesn't establish what constitutes a day, like Maryland does, or Montgomery County does, or, so.
I mean, as
I
far
haven't
as,
seen- yeah. Like here in Frederick, it's 12:01 a.m. to 11:59 p.m.
Oh,
But in
right.
Montgomery
it's in
County,
there.
the day is over at 9 p.m.
It's in one of the forms,
Is it?
yeah, 11:59 p.m., etc.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and to follow up what you just said, Kaz, and that line 4 under C, you know, establishing whatever's gonna be prorated and so forth. Payment of transfer tax, that's similar to Maryland, divided equally between buyer and seller. Pennsylvania doesn't have any break for the first-time buyer, like Maryland does. I'm not sure why. Tenant occupied property, I think this gets missed sometimes. Look down on, under 4H. There's a little box there, tenant occupied property, there's actually a form to fill out. Because that, again, could be kind of a point of contention. If you, even like a single family house, what's not normally a rental, that is occupied by tenants, you know, the seller always wants to hesitate, they don't want to give them notice until they know they got a sale. So you need 30 days or whatever to get the loan approved, but you also need to give the tenants 30-day notice at least. So, you know, you want to look at that and make sure you allow enough time for closing and, right? And the form addresses that. I didn't bring one of those along, but they should be in zip forms. Dates/time is of the essence on line 5. Written acceptance of all parties will be on or before, and I usually, you know, it depends. If I know if we're dealing with a bank as the seller, or we're dealing with somebody who's not available, but I like to put no more than 48 hours, typically, if it's a, you know, an arm's length transaction. I don't know what everybody else practices. Again, it's negotiable. Okay? Anybody have any questions about that? Zoning classification on page 3. That's sometimes hard to find. One good thing is, at least in PA now, county by county, and usually, you know, we have a lot of small municipalities up there, townships, boroughs, so forth, rather than county governments. So more and more of the small ones are getting their own websites. So they'll have maps so you can usually find zoning. But sometimes you got to call them on a Thursday between 9 and 11. It's the only time they're there. It's the only time somebody's manning the township, right? To get, yeah, right. And then you might get, oh, well, that's so-and-so, you know, and he's got a real job. He's not, he's just like somebody to help. Yeah. Good luck trying to get somebody in a rural township. Fixtures and personal property. Some of that stuff's in there by default, but I still write everything in. I don't know what, again, practice is. I see everything from see attached list, or as per multi-list, or as per whatever. I think from a contract standpoint, I'm not an attorney, but I'd probably put everything, just put the item in there so there's no question. Right, instead of referencing something else. Okay. Mortgage contingency, line 8. Again, different than Maryland, in that you just write down the type of mortgage it is in the box. That, I don't know why there's still a box for second mortgage. I don't know if that's ever even done anymore.
Yeah.
Like 80/20s?
Yeah.
Are they still doing 80/20s?
Yeah.
Okay.
Three, 1, 1 now.
All right. Okay. Any questions about any of that? about all the lines being filled in?
The, paragraph 7, the fixtures of personal property. So you
Yes.
have the seller's disclosure that
Yes.
has all of the inclusions
Right.
in there.
Right.
So, I mean, there's more room on that form there, to add anything additional other than the things that they have listed already than there is on this one. Do you
Right.
but you put them in both, or?
Well, yeah, here's my thought is, the seller may say, yeah, I'm leaving all this, but I think you assume that's at full price. So if you offer less than, different terms, they may say, oh, okay, I'll accept that, but you're not getting the mower or whatever, right?
And unless I'm mistaken too, that part, I think it's page 8 or 9 of the 10 in the hard disclosures, those are actually items that just happen to be or not in-house. It actually even says in there it's not to convey.
It's not a,
And thank goodness, just recently, like a contractor working on with Coldwell Banker, they actually provided a list, and I did exactly what you just said a second ago. I took each of those expensive items, dishwasher, washer, dryer, whole thing,
right,
I wrote them in there,
right,
and then I put, and all items listed by seller in conveyance checklist provided in contract.
and some lenders, depending on the financing, don't want to see personal property.
Right.
Do not put that in there.
Correct, but we're
But then-
talking about like major appliances, because remember,
Right.
Ray Act used to have items reserved.
Right,
Reserved meant they weren't conveyed,
right,
and suddenly you walk in and there was no washer and dryer.
right.
That's been a
And-
very
and-
sticky situation.
I don't know if it's just me, but anybody else walked in, do the walkthrough, and that good refrigerator is no longer there?
Yep.
It's like the beer refrigerator. Yeah, that's awkward, but, yeah. So I don't know how you address that, that's almost,
Initials right there.
Yeah. but I know some people will even take a picture, like, the tag or whatever in the fridge, so you know you're getting that refrigerator. Because, you're talking a couple grand in some cases. Yeah, good point. The other thing, and Pennsylvania is kind of not where Maryland is yet, but I know with Maryland forms, and I keep referencing Maryland because I'm assuming you guys do most of your work there. But it's like leased items, which is down below that, and typically it's propane tanks, but it may get into like solar panels and all that stuff. That's sort of starting up in PA now, kind of like Maryland had been. But that's a pretty important item to be identifying. Okay? Excluded items. And I don't know if that's just typical of PA or not, but I'm trying to be very careful with what's excluded there on line 7C. Because again, real world, you go to do the walkthrough and grandma's rose bushes got dug out of the front, where, oh yeah, we weren't leaving that. And nobody ever knew it, so. It ends up being a, out of your pocket, a gift certificate to the local garden center or whatever. Oh, well. Okay, mortgage contingency, we kind of went backwards there, but everybody knows how to fill in every one of those blanks.
What if you have to, if you're flipping it from, like all of a sudden, you have to flip it to FHA because there's credit issues, like, is there a clause like there is in Maryland?
No, but I would just do an addendum. Yeah, I would get it signed by all parties. That's your, yeah. Yeah, but that's a good point. Yeah, I wouldn't do it without telling somebody. Because that may change the terms a little bit for the seller too, as far as what they're required to do. And I know Maryland has a, don't they have a dollar amount if required by the, that's what I was thinking, on the financing in Maryland, that addendum, if there's a dollar amount of repairs required by the seller, required by the lender, Pennsylvania doesn't address that, not separately. Okay, any questions on any of that stuff? Something that, under 8B, it talks about lender approval, quote unquote. I don't know if we'll ever get that exactly the way we'd like it to be. Lender's approval is like the day before, the morning of settlement. You know, you can put any number you want in there, but I don't know that how you actually document it or how you actually prove it. And I don't know if we're ever gonna change the way lenders do business. So, unless if somebody has some insight on that,
I have to say the G-Card form on that is really good, because they really do specify
Right.
that financing, you know, is due by X date, with specific contingencies, because you always have things
Right.
like homeowners insurance and that kind of thing.
Right.
You know, homeowners insurance, title work completed, all of that kind of stuff. So they are really, they
right,
really do bullet it out to say, all contingencies must be met except these couple of things that are usually
we'll finalize
necessary.
items,
Yeah,
right.
finalized items,
Yeah,
or
that's
whereas
true.
it's so vague, you know, in the contract, it's like, well, what, okay, well, I gave you a commitment letter, but it's got 20
It's
contingencies,
got-
and you
yeah.
shouldn't still have verification of employment on there as one of the
Right.
conditions.
Right.
So,
But I think some lenders are getting verifications, you know, checking,
well, they do the day before.
Yeah.
They still will.
did you go buy furniture at Value City?
Right.
Get a card to
Right.
save 20%. Yeah. Ugh. Okay. All right.
Buyer education.
So much fun.
Yeah, right, I know. And then I always think it's funny then when I'll tell a buyer that, and I'll say, the lender already talked to you about that, right? And they'll be like, no, but I know they did.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm not gonna go over line by line unless there's something in there on page 4 that you particularly wanna talk about. That all just deals with specifics of the type of loan. What happens if the buyer defaults? FHA/VA, if applicable, just basically you're filling in the blanks down there in the box on H, that blank line down there has to appraise for that amount. And if it's FHA, you need to make sure that the buyer has signed get a home inspection document, right? Even though the lender may send you a separate one later. Page 5. This kind of deals with, he was asking about what happens if changing the buyer's financial status. Is that you back there?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
That line 9 on page 5. And it specifically says if a change of buyer's financial status affects buyer's ability to purchase, buyer will promptly notify seller and lenders. So, you know, I guess, I don't know that there's an actual form for that. I guess you would just use a kind of a general addendum to make sure everybody's aware that you're switching financing. Okay, status of water and sewer. I don't think that's anything that anybody doesn't know how to deal with. Land use restrictions, again, in Pennsylvania, you're gonna have to go to that particular municipality and find out. Sometimes, I don't know, Darren, what do you use for a resource? I mean, you wanna find out if a farm is in historic preservation or not. Is there a PA website for that? Not that I'm aware of.
aware of. I
Not
know,
either.
I know there's a way to check for the clean and green and all that stuff,
Right,
but no, I'm not sure about
yeah.
preservation.
Check with the seller, they should know.
Oh,
but-
yeah, they'll know,
Yeah, usually.
because they're tax stuff.
That's right.
It's all about the tax stuff.
It's all about the taxes. All right, over page 6 talks about the different types of status for the property, clean and green and so forth. I don't really do farms, so I think this is more dealing with that kind of thing. So I don't know if anybody here is a farm, does a lot of work with farms. Real estate disclosure law under E, it talks about not less than 1 and not more than 4 residential dwelling units. Anything less than that, it's required that the seller does a disclosure statement. Okay. And then on the disclosure statement, it tells you who is exempt from doing that. And I don't know if I can do that from memory. It'd be an estate, a bank, from family to family, new construction. Help me out, guys. Does anybody else know? I think it's kind of similar to
Maryland.
Maryland. Yeah, just make sure you know. Because not everybody does it. Especially if you're selling it for sale by owner, you gotta school them that that needs to be done. And I guess if you get somebody that refuses to do one, or you can't get one, then you need to just make a statement and have your client sign saying, you know, here's what happened and I couldn't get it, in case it ever blows back on you.
They still should do a disclaimer.
Should,
Yeah,
should.
yeah. When we just had an instance where a guy did it for sale by owner 5 years ago, now he's getting sued because he didn't disclose certain items. And he called one of our agents to say, can you help me? And he was like, no, you need to talk to an attorney because you didn't do what you're supposed to do. So
Right.
sellers really do need to
Oh,
be
yeah.
educated, so.
Yeah, and if, I don't know about you guys, but when I'm dealing with a yeah, Mike.
I was just gonna ask you, I've never come across somebody who didn't fill out the disclosures, either be my seller or when I have the buyer.
Right.
In Maryland, we have that page 4, you know, where they just do the disclaimer. Have you ever come across it? What does the seller do if they say, I don't want to answer any of these questions, I haven't lived in the property in 5 years?
Right.
Is there a disclaimer at the end? I've never seen that one, that's similar to Maryland.
Right. I would only recommend personally, somebody does a disclaimer if they don't know anything about the property and don't have any, you know, you can't make statements of fact about something you don't know. So that would be the only occasion.
But I just sign at the bottom, unable to answer these, or?
You mean in PA?
Yeah, for PA, the
Oh.
actual disclaimer itself.
Yeah, if it's an estate or something,
Right.
yeah, then they would be exempt. Yeah, and I don't think there's, on the very last page, I think that's like a 9-page document. On the very last page, there's a place at the bottom where they could
Okay.
sign a disclaimer.
Never read that.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and it says that also, even though you're not required to fill out the disclosure, if you're aware of any latent defect, you still have to disclose that. Yeah. If like, you know, you inherited your parents' property, for instance, and, you know, you went in and walked through the house and realized the basement's wet. So you get a contractor in there to pump it out. And then you get things dried up, but you need to disclose that, I don't think, even though you're exempt from a basic disclosure, because that'd be a latent defect. You know, somebody finds out later, people move in, and neighbor says, oh, yeah, they're always pumping water over there. Woo. All right. Any questions about disclosure? Disclaimer? Waiver of contingencies. Basically says that if the buyer doesn't do these in a timely manner, then they consider to release, accept the property as is. Buyer's due diligence / inspection, talks about what the rates are, and I don't think that's much different than any other state. You have a stated time that that's to be done, and the report and/or reply to inspection is what we use in PA. Saying, usually that's accompanied by a copy of the inspection report, asking for whatever repairs or credit you want, or releasing, just, you know, saying we'll take it as is. But the-
That form,
Yes, ma'am.
it says right on there, do not have the seller
Seller
sign
doesn't
that
sign that,
form.
right.
So what, do you have to get them to sign something different?
Yeah, the change in terms addendum,
And does
seller-
the seller agent prepare that?
yes.
Okay.
They'll prepare that from the report and what, yeah, and then have the seller sign it and send it back to you. Yeah, I don't know why, it used to be all one.
Does that?
No, seller's agent does that.
What's that?
right? The seller's agent has, because I, as a buyer's agent.
Yeah, the change to the
And that
terms.
seller's agent just had them sign it and send it back to me, and I
Yeah,
just accepted it.
I don't
so.
know.
It's, but the seller's agent is the one that's supposed to prepare that document, not a buyer's agent.
Right.
Okay.
If it kind of says right on the document, do
Do
not
not
have
have
sellers,
sellers.
I probably wouldn't do that.
That's what they did.
Because, you know, in the future, if you ever had to defend that, it's like, you can't read it.
Yeah, and this, I mean, this came up, you and I were talking about this at lunch.
Right.
I've seen it two different ways now at this point. I've seen it where the buyer's agent came, did their inspection, and there was a few things that they wanted fixed. They sent over, they didn't use the form that says do not have seller sign.
Mm-hmm.
They just sent over the change in terms addendum,
Mm-hmm.
and we either agreed with it or disagreed
Yeah.
with it or whatever,
Yeah,
and signed it off and sent it back, it was done.
yeah,
The other one was more of a utilizing the 5-day negotiation period where
Right.
the buyer at that point was saying, what do you think about these repairs? And that was the, you know, a back and forth. And then once it was determined, yes, this is what then the change in terms addendum was created
Mhm.
from that. So,
yeah. I don't know why that wouldn't work. I mean, just as
Yeah.
long as everybody knows what's being done, get it in writing.
yeah.
And here's the part that everybody hates, is page 7 and 8, where you have to either have them sign on the left or initial on the left if they want the inspection, initial on the right if they don't. So I think the idea is it makes it very clear, if you initial waived, that there's no question. They waived that part of it. Okay?
Oh, that'd be great. Do you have seller's initial both?
Mhm.
You have the seller's initial both as well?
I have some agents that want the seller to sign it, or to initial it, and I never have.
Yeah.
I always
Really?
assumed that was for the buyer.
Yeah, really, does the buyer want to do that? It's
Yeah.
right, the seller can't really.
I mean, the
have
seller's
how
initial on the
buyer-
bottom, so hopefully they've seen.
Yeah.
If I'm working with Maryland, where all parties sign it, that these are the inspections that are being
Right,
done.
but it's definitely different here, because you would never want to have a seller sign, so a buyer elected to do it, the seller can't waive it. If the buyer wants to do it, they have a right to do it, so the seller can't come back and
Right,
do anything different, so it's just a buyer.
Okay.
right, that's my opinion. You do something different, Darren? I saw you. You have
I've
the
seen it go
seller.
both ways, really. It's,
Yeah.
you know, when they're at an issue regardless.
I mean, there's no harm if the seller initials. I don't know if it's.
No.
Just so they all agree.
I thought-
So
yeah, I
they-
thought
Just
all
so
were,
the
but-
seller understands. They
If
gotta
you want to make
say
sure your
it.
seller understood and you're explaining what that, well, you know, and then the on-lot sewage, if you got septic,
Mhm.
I think it's important to be aware in Pennsylvania that the seller has some requirements.
Yeah, they do. That's a biggie to explain.
Yeah, and it spells it right out. It may require a hydraulic load test.
Yep. That's
So the seller, at seller's expense, will locate, provide access to, empty the individual on-lot sewer system, and provide all water needed unless otherwise agreed.
Yep.
So the seller's on the hook. So when you're doing your closing cost estimate for the seller, you might want to and this is part of it, make sure that they're aware. You don't want to surprise them, oh yeah, by the way, you have some more costs. Everybody familiar with that? The hydraulic load test, all that stuff? No?
That's expensive.
If a property, most septic inspection companies now, if a property is vacant more than a few weeks, I don't know what the standard is, definitely 30 days. They, in order to, what's the right word, certify or, I don't know what the actual, I don't know if certify is the right word. Make sure, make a statement saying that at the time they inspected it's functional. They may require a hydraulic load test. And the hydraulic load test is they come in and they'll empty the tank, pump out the tank, then they'll bring in water, fill the tank, make sure it's not leaking anywhere, and then pump it out again. So, and that's, it used to be, I haven't done one for a while, but it used to be like $500, plus the cost of the certification. I guess certification's the right word. Yeah, so, and the seller, if you think about it now, you know, especially getting to rural property or up in PA, you know, who knows? A lot of times the seller has no idea where the septic tank is. So that's gotta be uncovered. You gotta find it, uncover it, you know, give access to it, pay for some of this pumping, and then put it back, restore it back to the way it was prior to you're digging it up, yes.
Would they have to pull some records from the health department up there to locate it if they don't know?
Unfortunately, Pennsylvania doesn't have that access to that information like Maryland does.
All right.
It's terrible.
It's getting a
So
little better.
your
because
best
of the
resource
3-year-old.
is the local septic inspector, you know, because they'll say, oh yeah, I know that property, or you know. Local guys have done it for years and they know where they're at, they know, they can just probably tell you the condition. Yes,
I know there's a lot of sand mounds up there. Do they,
Yes.
what do they do differently, or do they do the same?
they do it
thing?
the same way. Yeah, I think they feel like the only way to accurately tell if the system is functioning properly is to pump it. Although I've seen inspections, quote-unquote inspections, where you know, it's more of a visual, you remember they used to do the old dye test? You remember how they did
Oh,
that?
man, that's old school.
Yeah,
Now we're talking age.
yeah, yes.
In Pennsylvania, they have to pump every 3 years or 5 years.
Depends on the municipality.
Yeah.
Right, but
I think
so-
three's
so most of
typical.
the time, I've never had a seller that didn't know where the tank was.
Yeah, it's
Right.
gotten better.
Yeah,
Because they have to pump it, they have to pump
Now
it.
they
so
do.
have to
right,
give
now,
the guy
and that's
access.
changed in the last few years.
Yeah.
Adams County's
5
really, really strict on it.
Yep.
Franklin's not so bad. You get out into Fulton County
Forget it.
and some other,
Wild, wild west.
it's like whatever. Yeah, you don't know what you're gonna find.
Seriously.
So do you have your sellers, you know, address that before you go on the market? You have them.
Well, you know, it's funny, a lot of times you're doing an initial interview or you're getting ready to list the property and the seller will say, you know, part of what they're gonna do is like, well, we're gonna get the tank pumped. And I'll tell them, no, don't do that, because that'll be part of the buyer's inspection process, so let it go.
Okay.
So you don't wanna pump it, you know,
Then
and
you
then
have
2
to pay
weeks
for it
later, right, have to pay for it again. Yeah.
What if it's a community septic? Like,
That's a good question. Well, I think they have to have a permit, they have to have something on record for the community, whoever's managing that. I would
Because this is
think
specifically for
they-
on-lot sewage, on that.
That's, yeah, individual on-lot sewage, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you know, and I don't know about every other state, I know Pennsylvania sort of had what was the best technology or whatever.
Oh, the
And
bad
then
system. Oh, yeah.
Governor Hogan's like
Oh,
said,
man.
no, that's ridiculous, and then,
Save the crabs.
but you know, save the crabs. But it seems like what the push is for, in a lot of these small municipalities, is government fundings becoming more available to put in public systems and get away from the old septic systems. Especially, you know, when you have wells and septics in proximity, you know, it's just a problem. But that's not just PA. I mean, little towns around Hagerstown, like Smithsburg, for instance, there's a subdivision that they put septic systems in on 1/4 acre lots, Holiday Acres,
Yep.
if anybody ever saw anything in there. But those systems are all gonna fail if they're tested. Yeah. Just doesn't work. All right. Any other questions about home inspection?
Well, just last week I heard, and I don't know if you covered this right before I walked in, the inspector told me this, not another agent, but even if you don't ask for any repairs as part of your home inspection, automatically, as effective January 1st, sellers will automatically get access to the home inspection reports in PA.
Yes,
You did hear that? Okay.
yes. Yeah, you have to, you
I guess
have
that's
to
a request.
provide, yes, that's a change. Right. And I think we're gonna get to that on page 8, down at inspection contingency. And I'm looking for the specific,
B1, you're,
yeah, If the results of the inspections elected are satisfactory, buyer will present all reports in their entirety to seller accepted property. Yeah. So, and I think in any case, 1, 2, or 3, buyer will give the full report. I know some people had to practice where they just give whatever page that repair was recommended on the report and ask for that repair and not send the whole inspection report. But now, I've always just sent the whole thing. I don't know why there's any reason to keep it secret. And then you get into the question, if for some reason the sale falls through, can the seller use that report? And I don't know that it addresses that in here. But I don't see any why not. I mean, if you have the knowledge. I think the other thing is, if the sale doesn't go through for whatever reason, the buyer does a report, and let's say there's radon, and the buyer just says, nah, I don't want the house because it's got radon. And PA, we can do that. I call this the weasel clause. You don't have to give a reason other than you had an inspection, you just didn't like the inspection report. There's not a specific reason you have to give to say, give me my money back, I'm gone. So now the seller knows there was high radon. They should modify their disclosure, update their property disclosure. I don't see that happening a lot, but it should be done.
Well, that's a latent defect.
That's a latent
Know that.
defect, exactly. And I think you need to explain to your seller, it's like, guess what? It's not like we can just,
Yeah.
Hopefully you get the kind of buyers that don't care. They're like, yeah, something's got to carry. My favorite kind of buyer. Got to die something.
Right.
All right? So, then you get into who does what based on the report. It's going to fill in the blanks down there on 3A. Days to, give your proposal. Seller has days, it defaults to 2 to give a response. If anybody fails to do either one of those, it's voidable. The seller or the buyer could terminate based on, what happens. It's pretty self-explanatory. Does anybody have any questions about it? No? All right. That on page 9, line 14, and I don't know if Mike, if you were here when I talked about that, that's something that was as of September of last year. Within 7 days, if not specified, from the execution date of the agreement, buyer will order a title report. Okay? And hopefully everybody's on board and understands that. If you have a buyer, that has to be done right away. And obviously, just so you don't have that pop up at the very end. Okay? I think a lot of this is just sort of boilerplate, the rest of it. 15 is notices and assessments. That's kind of like deals with if, let's say the seller's aware, they've gotten a letter from their borough or whatever municipality they live in, they got to replace the sidewalks by X date, and they're going to close before that. You got to tell the buyer,